one of my favorite drinks is Scotch. So today we'll have a little lesson courtesy of Frank Biskupek, all the way from, where's home for you, Frank?
Home for me is Brampton, Ontario, but originally Edinburgh, Scotland.
Yes, and he is part Polish and Scottish, which I find fascinating.
Excellent mix. Love to drink, don't want to pay for it.
Okay, all right, so you are the big rep, the grand poobah of Glenlivet.
Yes, I'm the ambassador. It's a heck of a title.
Oh, it is.
For a small Scot.
Okay, so there's a lot of Glen families, but Glenlivet is probably the most popular?
Well, it's the most famous, and it's one of the most popular in the world for sure. It's you know, it's been around since 1824 is when we took out a license to actually distill. But to be perfectly honest, they were producing single malt whiskey in the Highlands, and the first time they found out was in 1494. And in 1494, if one reckons that 2 years before that Columbus discovered the Americas, they've been making whiskey a long time illegally in Scotland. So the Glenlivet was the first. The British government decided in 1823 that they would have to start licensing the Scotch because they were just losing too much money with tax. So our George Smith, who was our co-founder, he actually began the system in the region called Speyside, and so we were the first to take out the license, and we actually won a massive court case late in the 1800s in 1884, and the government gave us the right to call our whiskey the Glenlivet, and that's because there was over 200 distilleries in that area producing illegal whiskey. Wow. And they all wanted to be able to use the name Glenlivet because it's a style of whiskey as much as an area of whiskey. And the Livet Glen is the Livet Valley, and it's a beautiful area. Cairngorm Mountains are just beyond us, and a lot of our water comes from that area. It's wild, it's rustic, it's perfect weather for making single malt Scotch, and we're delighted to say that yes, ours is the most popular whiskey.
All right, I'm getting thirsty now, though. There is an art to making Scotch.
Yes, there's an art to making Scotch, and what most of the distillers do today, and believe me, a distiller doesn't, you don't become a distiller at 20 years old. It takes many years of training and hands-on at the job. So most of the distillers are you know, getting on, and that is because they've learnt their trade, and so they all have different ideas of the type of flavours that they want to have and the character that they want to have in their Scotch whisky. So what we do is we actually use bourbon casks for all of our Scotches as the first maturation process, or you know, using the wood as they call it in the making of the Scotch. So yeah, we use bourbon casks, and depending on the Scotch that we're going to talk about, I'll tell you what else is added or helped to enhance the flavours and characters. We
are going to move right on to that. I see the famous green bottle.
Yes, the famous green bottle for the Glenlivet is a 12-year-old. Very simply, it's 12 years in a third fill bourbon cask, and when I tell you that what we do is we buy the bourbon cask after it's been used once, and then we use it 3 times before its career is over in making whiskey. So we would use a first fill for the older mature whiskies, and we'd work our way down. So for the Glenlivet 12, we use our third fill cask, and that whiskey there is actually the honest taste of Speyside. It's taken straight from its cask and bottled. It's a delicious whiskey and great as an aperitif, or as we like to think, a good starter whiskey if you're going on the whiskey trail.
Okay, we're going to move on to 15. What is special about 15?
Well, the 15-year-old is it's the same. It's got the same life. It starts off in the bourbon cask. It's probably a second full bourbon cask, and what we'll do with that is after about 12 or 13 years, we'll take some of that whiskey and we will now put it in a Limousin cask, which is a French oak, and it's used actually, and Remy Martin use that cask for all of their cognacs too. It's really to flavour the whiskey slightly, it's to smooth it out, and that's exactly what it does. It also gives it quite a nice colour because it's quite different than the colour from the 12-year-old. Would you like to try one of these 15s?
I would like to try the 15, I think.
Let's. One of the reasons that I like to see the ladies try this is because of the smoothness of the Scotch. It really does go down nicely. It doesn't hurt like some Scotches do, and maybe we can just go through a little bit of tasting and nosing. So if you want to, would you like to, can you lift your Scotch?
I certainly can.
And first of all, we'll look at the colour, and you can see it's a beautiful dark golden colour. We nose it. and we try and figure out what it is that we get from this whiskey. And we get the Glenlivet style is light, and it's very light, but it also carries lots of fruity flavour.
Fruit. I smell apricots.
You definitely get apricots with that. Yeah, and as in with the 12-year-old, you'll get lighter fruits. Now you're going to get more into the darker fruits. You'll even get poached, and then maybe even dry fruit when we get to the higher ones. So let's have a taste. Cheers.
Cheers. There definitely is that as it goes down.
It's warm as it goes down, but as I say, there's no hurt at the back of your throat. It's all flavour, all taste. Lots of character to that whiskey. My favourite, by the way, with just a wee drop of water.
Okay. This one is interesting. I'm just noticing the name.
Yes.
Nandra.
We've actually used a Gaelic name for this whiskey. It means natural in Gaelic. And the reason we use that name is because we have a different method of bottling this whiskey so as we can keep the alcoholic content up. It's a very popular thing now with the distilleries, is to offer a cask strength whiskey. So this one here is cask strength. It's about 54.9% proof versus a normal 40 to 43% proof. And basically what we do is we chill filter our whiskey when we're cleaning it before we bottle it. So what we do is we don't use the chilling of water in the process of this. We still clean the whiskey, but what we do is we use the older method. That way we can keep the alcohol content up. It isn't reduced. I would love you to taste this one. Will you have a?
I will. A wee one.
Dram.
How is this one different than, say, from 21 and 18?
Okay, well, it's age difference first, because this is 16 years old. First fill bourbon cask. But it's what you get between the cask and then not taking any of the alcohol content out of the whiskey is what really is different. So it won't be as smooth when it hits the palate, but I want to see your face when you taste it, because this is a whiskey that you have at home for those cold winter nights. I promise you.
How long have you been doing this, Frank? You have such a passion for this. It would be hard to say no to not having a drink.
I've been practicing all my life, but I've only actually worked with the Glenlivet for 7 months. And I have a lot more to learn, but I must admit it's a lot of fun doing.
You're natural.
Learning. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Cheers, or Slanjovar as we say. And then comes a smile, right? That is it's an amazing Scotch, yes. Very different. Lots of spiciness in that whiskey. It's almost harsh on the palate and then smooths right out, and then it warms. And this whiskey will stay with you for a long time. And another secret with Scotch is if you leave it in the glass, it will kind of change character again. It's because you finally, after all these years of maturation being in the barrels and then in the bottle, it's been dying to get out and tell you how good it is. So here we are. Now we know.
Oh, well, one last thing, Frank. We're drinking this Scotch. Now, what do you pair food? What kind of food do you pair with this? I would always
recommend smoked fish is a wonderful pairing with any of the single malt whiskies. Cheese is another thing. A good hard cheese like a Parmigiano, aged Parmigiano, or a very old cheddar cheese, and chocolate. Chocolate is a wonderful pairing, especially when you get to our 18 and 21-year-old Scotches.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I'm sure the ladies would like it, and yes, Scotch can also be a ladies' drink.
Thank you so much. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you to Ken and all his staff here at Win Pub at the Quality. And wow, this is like a guy's pub.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I might have a round of golf before I leave.
Okay, that's it, folks. Scotch, #1. For Shaw TV, I'm Tracy Koga.